Welcome, and apologies for doing this presentation in English. It would be the world's shortest presentation if I was to do it in Mexican or Spanish, because I only know about 2 words. Secondly, I'm incredibly pleased to be here, because when I look at Mexico, it is a fantastic country when it's going to come to the changing travel industry of the world. 120 million. I heard today, top 7 in the world when it comes to tourism, and I think you have just started scratching the surface. It's also like a lot of other countries that are developing right now, a country that's starting at the right place, because we go in waves in technology development, and we've seen some of the things that's happened in Europe and in the US over the last 10, 15 years, but we're now really starting the next evolution of travel. So I'm going to try to give you a little bit of a sense of what's happening in the technology and how technology is changing and the capability this gives us. I'm not going to stand here and talk about internet and what all of it does in terms of web pages and the rest, because if we were going to do that, I'm definitely too old and we should have one of the students up here talking about what's happening on that side. But I'm going to try to give you the big picture of how technology really creates new opportunities for us, and I'm going to leave you with the food for thought of going back and figuring out how does that change your business? How does it change what Mexico needs to do on an overall basis to be successful? The company I come from is Travelport. We have the benefit of basically sitting in the middle of the travel chain. We're a little bit like the priests in the travel industry. Everyone talks to us, everyone tells us what they want to do, and we take all that in and we build the picture together. We absolutely do not share what we hear, but we build the picture together. So let's start on the journey. So I think one important part to be able to understand the future is to look at the past, because technology evolution is very seldom revolution. It's an evolution of where you try things, some things work, some things don't. For those of you that are my age or older, I think some of you will recognize the tapes, the ones that got stuck, and if you were lucky you could save them. The CD player, the VHS versus Betamax discussion. Why did VHS win out, and why doesn't it exist today? But I think the important part is understanding where we come from to be able to understand where you're going. The other part when we talk about the change. This is not the 1940s. Less than 10 years ago, this is how we connected to the internet. For you of those that you are the millennials, you actually made a phone call to connect to the internet. And if you were lucky, technology took you 5 minutes to download a web page. And it looked like an SMS text. That's where we're starting from, and that's where we need to come from. So we've seen an enormous evolution in the last 10, 15 years. But I actually believe it's only the starting point. But we also face a complete new generation of people that actually are not quite sure what they come from. So if you look at the disk, the floppy disk, most of us know what we actually put it into a computer before. Teenagers today call it the save symbol. I have a 5-year-old son. He tries to go to the TV and change channels by swiping at it, because that's what you do with an iPad. But that's, for those of us that lead businesses, those are the people that are going to be the business travelers. Those are the people that are going to be the leisure travelers in the next 10 to 15 years. And that's where technology needs to take us. We also need to understand that not everything is a great idea. For if we look back to the future, there was a great innovation that I personally loved, which was the hoverboard. Today you can actually manufacture one. If you go to YouTube, you'll be able to find how to do one. It's not that hard. The problem is it's not that practical. There's a lot of better ways of transporting yourselves. For those of you that were in the telecom industry, back in the 90s there was something called WAP, technically perfectly as a solution, but no one knew what to do with it. Today it's a dead technology. So it's about getting it right, and it's about taking the opportunity. But let's talk about travel. This is what flying was not long ago. it's no different. We have also gone through our evolution. If you think about travel, not in the 50s or the 60s, but in the 80s, we were writing tickets by hand. Actually, the company I come from was a replacement of a physical book, the OAG timetable, which is what travel agencies used to look at when they were trying to book someone's travel. And then we put it together in gigantic databases that became known as the global distribution systems, and we managed to get that knowledge from the terminals. But it's not just the technology at the front end, it's also the back end that creates the capability for traveling, because we don't have the attention span to wait hours at the airport if we don't have to. And if you look at, for example, the back end today of technology, Heathrow today has 18 kilometers of conveyor belts for the luggage. Basically, from the moment you put your luggage in and check it in, to the moment it arrives and gets loaded into the aircraft, there's not a human person touching that luggage. That's the evolution of technology in a place where we actually don't see it. And I think the important part as well is when we think about technology, if you're looking for a technology revolution, it's really not going to happen. It's an evolution that happens. It's about taking the good ideas out there, picking a bit of that idea, picking a bit of that idea, and combining it. 5 years ago, most people didn't know what an iPhone was. Apple didn't revolutionize calling people. Companies like Nokia, Ericsson had been around for quite a few years doing exactly that. But what Apple did successfully, and what I think is a challenge for everyone here, whether you're a ministry of a country trying to figure out how to bring more tourists here, whether you're running a travel agency, or you're a student that's going to build the next business idea of the future, it's about finding those little pieces of ideas and combining them together. Because what Apple did is they figured out what actually drove business was usability. It wasn't changing the phone, it was changing the environment by taking the bits and pieces that were out there. And let's not forget what quite often in technology becomes the variable we ignore, people. Because if people can't understand why technology evolves, there's no point in evolving technology, because at the end of the day, it's people that actually have to use the technology. The good news as we're picking all of these ideas together is that technology is getting smaller and smaller, and we can pretty much put technology today anywhere we want, whether it's a watch, whether it's glasses. Today you can put chips in your dogs, your cats, your products to always know where they are. I guess soon in the future they can put a chip in us as well so they'll know where we are when we're traveling. And think about it, actually an industry that we should look at is the transportation industry. Because what do? When we think about travel, most of us think about a painful journey. Got to get to the airport, I got to get security, I got to get through. Oh God, did I book the hotel? What happens if I'm delayed? What if there's weather? And the rest of it. The transport industry picks you up at home, guarantees your arrival time the next morning, and if there's any issues, they will reroute you on the way over there. If we can do that with a package, why can't we do that with human beings? And I think that's the level of expectation we face going forward in the travel industry. People don't want more choices. They actually want less choices, but they want the right choices. You go and search for Mexico on the internet today, you'll probably find a couple of billion hits. None of us is interested in a couple of billion hits. Most human beings are capable of handling 3 to 5 data points. Women actually 4 to 7. After that, we get confused. So what am I going to do with 2 billion data points then? So that's where technology truly has to help us become better. The other big challenge for us is it's not about the internet in terms of me relating to the internet. What is happening now, the next technology revolution that is happening, or evolution, is the Internet of Things. Everything is becoming connected. Whether it's your fridge, whether it's your heater, whether it's your car that will call if you have an accident. So how do you build that into the travel flow and the experiences that you're actually trying to promote? So for me, the Internet of Things, I actually counted at home. I have 31 connected devices at home right now. In the next 5 years, they estimate that every person will have at least 7 more connected devices than themselves. So there will be 50 billion connected devices out there. So how do you turn that into your advantage when you're traveling? Maybe it's making sure that they can relate to what's happening at home so they can feel comfortable when they're vacationing, or whatever else that's important at that point in time. So it's not about, technology is not about adding wealth of choices. It's about getting you the right choice. It's about making sure you have the right technology at your fingertips. And this is not, the Internet of Things is not something that's happening in the future. I read on the way over here that Hilton, by the end of next year, will have 270,000 hotel rooms where you no longer need a key. As long as you have an iPhone, you can basically go directly to your room. That means that the front desk is redundant, because you don't need to check in and you don't need to check out, because everything is in your mobile device. How does that change the service offering that you then give your customers? Because you no longer interact with them from the start. Same thing with airlines. Let's talk about another industry, the cruise industry. A couple of new cruise ships were launched recently, Oasis of the Sea and Allure of the Sea. They no longer refer to them as cruise ships. The cruise company actually refers to them, the Royal Caribbean actually refers to them as floating cities. Every ship has more than 6,500 connected devices so that the staff know exactly what you want to experience. It's no longer a cruise you're buying, it's your cruise. Because not only does it ask you what you want up front, but it actually gathers the data and learns while you're traveling. So the next time you come down to breakfast, they know if you want coffee or orange juice. It's getting that to the personalization level. So what makes all this work in the future? Well, there's two things. If you haven't thought about anything else in your business or in terms of running the country, there's two things you got to get your head around to be successful. The first one, well, we'll see if we actually get to the first one. Well, that wasn't the first one. Well, now we're going backward. Oh, well, there's a picture missing. We'll keep Dolly up there while I talk about it. The first one is cloud computing. So the day of where data centers, you had to take multi-year investments to actually decide on what you were going to do, are gone. Today with cloud computing, the power is out there, and the choice is how you harness what you want to do. So it's really about thinking, what are the analytics, what's the structure we want, and how do we sell our products? And it really changes anyone who's selling anything. We are no longer going to be selling products. We are actually going to be using data to meet the needs of the customers, and that may or may not be a product. And you really need to look at it from that perspective. In the 80s, a lot of people talked about Nike and said that was an evolution because Nike, the world's biggest shoe manufacturing company, actually had no factories. It was a brand. You look at that in today's environment, Netflix, the world's biggest streaming partner out there when it comes to streaming down videos, etc., actually does not own a single data center. They rely completely on what's out there in the cloud. The second part of cloud computing, second part of it, that's being able to harness the data, make sure you can actually gather all the data. If you don't get that right, then you won't be able to do the other one, which people call big data. For me, it's about the capabilities of understanding, the processing power of truly understanding what people want, whether it's a business traveler or a leisure traveler. So you don't have to wait. You don't have to try to give people pages and pages and pages of choices for the hotels. There's 650,000 hotels out there. Has anyone ever tried to look for a hotel in a place like New York? You can spend a day going through the pages of choices out there. No one wants that. What we want is the 5 to 7 choices that are relevant for me. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook actually has gone as far as saying, I can't handle all the choices in the world, so I've decided to make my life really easy. I have one type of black t-shirt that I wear every single day because it takes away one choice for me of all the choices I have out there. So I think for me, it's really a key part. It's not about giving people more choice. It's about giving them the relevant choice. And that's where technology comes in, by using big data to actually really crunch all their social media and the rest of it. But let's not forget, this is about trust. Because you can crunch all that data and you can think you're doing the right thing. But if people don't trust your brand, if people don't trust what your company is trying to do, they will shut you off. And they will move away. So it's one thing being able to crunch it. It's two, figuring out what you use it for. And if we can go back to Dolly, I think the other part which is really important here is, just because the technology exists doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. We can today clone sheep, we can clone human beings, we can actually decide on the genetic setup of babies. Is that the right thing to do? And we're going to see those type of technologies coming into the travel industry as well, because we're going to have such a wealth and a breadth of knowledge around our customers. And actually, if travelers today, if you ask them, they say, if I trust the brand and I trust the company I'm traveling with, then 74% of them are willing to give you all their data. If they don't trust them, try competing with the ones that they trust and that are giving them the data. So how do you build that trust? Good. Well, it's time to bring out the popcorns and lean back a little bit. I'm going to show you a couple of minutes film of a little bit of what the technologies that are out there today actually can create. So it's a film from Microsoft, but I find it's about 6 minutes. We're not going to see all of it, but it just gives a real sense of the Internet of Things, the capabilities if you use big data and cloud computing in the right way, what it actually can drive, and how it's no longer an isolated product, but it's an ecosystem of relationships you have. So if you're running your own business, you got to figure out, what are the other parts of the ecosystem that I need to hook into? Because I'm not going to be able to solve everything in terms of travel going forward. But if I can hook into the other bits and pieces, we can make a very strong end-to-end journey. So let me show you the film for a couple of minutes. So I think, as you can see, it's an ecosystem of things communicating together. So what's the challenge that poses for us as a travel industry? Well, part of it is anyone going to want to travel when they can live the experience on screen? I actually fundamentally believe so, because people want to meet people. So actually, we might also have to change our focus, so it might not be in going to places anymore, because those places are much more available than they were historically. And live, not just in pictures, not just in movies, but the way you would experience them if you were physically there. But the human behavior, whether it's business or leisure, of wanting to meet people, wanting to interact with other cultures, are always going to be there. That's a natural trait of ours. But the way we position and we sell our products might be different, because we might in the future not be wanting to go to Paris because of the Eiffel Tower. We might be wanting to go to Paris because we want to get to know the French people. And I think that's a real question that we have to pose ourselves in the travel industry. Another one, let me just start briefly back on the data with something as boring as security. You see the technology evolution going through there as well, where more and more by people sharing their data, back to that trust aspect, the question therefore is, how can technology then help them be more effective? So these are some of the examples that's coming up when IATA is looking at it. So in terms of your security, when you come back, if you've shared your data on a two-way street and it's someone that you trust, actually you'll have the choices of a known traveler, a normal traveler, or someone that's never traveled before, and the benefits of what you've done historically in terms of traveling will come to you. I talked about the human side before, and this is something that today most of us smirk and laugh and say, yeah, of course I check in online, and of course I have my boarding card on my phone. So when checking in today, even today, only 59% of people feel feels okay. But if you put a human person next to that machine, that goes up to over 80% being comfortable. Back to that aspect, let's not forget the human being as we evolve technology. And that is a crucial part as businesses evolve, whether it's an experience or whether it's a travel experience. And I go back to my example, but VAP and Nokia, who no longer is a business because I misunderstood the human dimension of making a phone call, which is a very simple dimension. Oops, now okay, well, interesting enough. So let's talk about mobile. It's happening more and more. If you look in Mexico today, in 2011, there were about 9 million smartphones. 2017, there will be 60 million of them. Half of your population will have a smartphone, at least. By the end of this year, 92 million people in Latin America will own a tablet, PC. 92 million. That's a big customer group. And we already know the basic things that people do. And is it really is it reality? It is happening. Marriott last year sold hotel rooms on mobile devices for $1.3 billion. So if you're wondering whether mobiles are really picking up, absolutely. And today it does the basics for all of us. The new thing that's now coming more and more in the travel industry is what's been defined as a wayfinding. We all hate traveling because of the confusion. New airports. I travel 200 days a year. I still hate coming to a new airport because you don't know where security is, you don't know where your flight is, and you always feel stressed, and you always feel like you're late for the plane, or you always don't exactly know where you're going. Same thing when you're in a city, getting from the hotel or to the airport or where you are, you never have an idea of traffic because it's an unknown city, etc. So you end up wasting a lot of time. The new part is really, how can you use technology across the journey? And this is in the airports where it's happening. This is not the airport driving it, but once again, it's about understanding the whole ecosystem. So it's the airport together with the airlines, together with the security teams that they're building the complete journey, so you actually know how to get there. Today, that is on your mobile device, because that's the most natural thing we have. And you see companies like MTT, who happens to be a Travelport company, and I know a little bit about them, building products called concierge that will guide you through, that will tell you how far you are, will tell you what the queues are. On board then, once we finally make it through, 70% of travelers today say that they would prefer to use their own personal devices when flying, i.e. your own iPad or your own tablet. Most airlines are very busy investing into bigger screens because they all have to have the bigger screen, etc. So I think that poses some challenges. If we're asking to have our own devices, the airlines, and the hotels for that matter, are taking some very big investment into making the infrastructure around us digital. How do the two of them match out, and how do we actually bridge the two of them? Because we can take all these investments and actually really don't have any use of it if the traveler don't see the need of them. Most travelers today, as you see some of the internet services, and I saw one in the US that's just starting, I think it's Virgin in the US that's starting, and saying, you know what? We're going to only stream the stuff we want to your iPad when you're on board. We might not even have screens, and you can borrow an iPad if you want. And then you can surf the net for everything else, but you choose what you want. And if you don't want to sit and wait for the streaming, you can actually download it before you go. So you can decide on what your personal experience is instead of choosing between 57 films on the airplane. Talked a little bit about hotels and mobile. 70% of all hotel sales on a mobile today is for the same day stay. Same day stay. That is very different from where we come from historically, because we would plan quite far ahead. So what does that mean in terms of our technical infrastructure? Well, it creates fantastic opportunities, and you see most of the hotel chains in the world are working with what they call proximity offers. So when you come within 20 miles of their hotel, and they have rooms available, they might give you a price that wouldn't be available for anyone else. Think about what a wonderful innovation for all the traveling salespeople that are out there then that don't know which city they're going to end up at the end of the day when they finish their travel. But it also means that you got to figure out how you adapt your programs. And talking about mobile and this pace of it, you look at millennials today and loyalty, because you say, well, my loyalty program is going to make sure they stay with me. Millennials today expect a reward within 3 months of signing up for something. How many loyalty programs out there are geared up for giving you a free award within 3 months? Most of them are on the basis that you collect points for the entire year, or preferably multiple years before you get a chance to use it. Put the millennium behavior with the capabilities on the mobile, and you start getting some really interesting business ideas, picking and choosing the little bits and pieces. Biometrics. A couple of years ago, it was doubtful because personal integrity, people were worried about your biometrics, your DNA, your retina scans, etc. Today, most hotel chains that's out there are looking at biometrics as a solution, even a replacement for the mobile phone. I talked earlier on about Hilton was rolling out the mobile phone as a device. Well, maybe that's going to be gone in a couple of years, and actually you carry your key with you through your biometrics. But we're only going to give them that information if we trust that brand and that chain, because we don't want to give our biometric information to someone we don't trust when we don't know where it can end up. Clear is another system where in the US you can nowadays give all your information up front and you get fast-tracked through security. You don't have to take your shoes and the rest of it off, which I'm sure is it can be painful. And then one of the things that we rarely talk about is the environmental aspect. Because we talk about travel, Mexico being growing the tourism, etc. One of the biggest hindrance and the power of people that's out there today is how they perceive that we use technology to help adapt the environmental positively. You now see airplanes that go on other things than normal fuel. You see optimization around speed. You see even concepts like airlines flying in convoys because it reduces the drag on the airlines behind. But if we don't use our technology to solve the environmental concerns, not only we will kill this planet, but the generation millennials are then not going to travel because they are not going to put the damage to the planet. They're not going to accept that. So the challenge on us in the industry is saying, how do we use technology to make sure it becomes something positive and a good thing as part of the experience and not something negative? So So let's just look at a journey in the near future. Let's say 2025, we talked about 2030. This is actually one of my favorite cartoons when I grew up. I don't think we're going to be that far from there now. But if we look at what we go through today, we all sit on the phone, we call our travel agency, we try to ask them what the choices are. I think back to the power of data, big data, and cloud computing. What we got to do is harness that power so we don't have to sit and wait for someone to contact us. But when that meeting gets booked in Outlook, we come back with a recommendation saying, here's the flights that gets you to that meeting, here's the normal hotels you stay at. So actually, it's not about us making choices. It's about us not having to make a choice if we're happy. Back to the black t-shirt of Mark. He doesn't have to make a choice. The only time we make a choice is if we want to change something that we do differently. And think about how many travel businesses have built their entire business on choice. Look in any travel catalog. You have all the hotels in the world you can want to look at. Look at the airlines. They talk about all the fare classes, etc. We're just getting overwhelmed with choice. Where we're going to end up with technology is it's relevant choices. It's the time we want to change something. Or it's a time when they don't have the information around us. But the start of my journey is probably going to be, you booked a meeting, I booked a travel for you. Today, we talk about mobile devices, and this is, mobile devices, and you choose your hotel. Well, in that world, this is not even going to be there, because they will already have booked the same hotel we all stay at. We don't even have to confirm it, because we said that's the way we travel. We will probably spend our time more on the things that actually matter when we arrive, because we all know, I'm not going to choose between 2,000 hotels in New York. I stay at the hotel I like. But I also, more and more, what data gives us and the power of data, it's not just the hotel or the airline. If you're flying with KLM today, you can choose who you sit next to, because you can actually, if people allow you, they'll have their Facebook profiles. So when you look at the seat map, you can see whether you can sit beside someone that seems a little bit too young, a little bit too old, a bit talkative, or whatever else. You look at hotels. Today we talk about 360-degree videos. The future is not choosing the hotel you stay at, it's choosing the room you stay in. And that's the challenge for hotels, because that's what people expect today. They don't expect a generic description of the Hilton Maldives. They expect to be able to look at the room they're going to book and feel like that's good enough. Those are the relevant choices we want to make, and how do we cater for it. Rental cars, given I do that, it's probably going to be around, and it's probably going to, potentially by 2025, we will see driverless pickups. We will have someone that just picks us up and drives us to the airport if we need to get there. When we get there, we're going to have our personal hologram or our personal assistant that walks us through and tells us what the benefits are. It's already here today. When I walk into Heathrow in London, the first thing I get is the offers that's on display. Dear Hilton Rewards member, here's the things you can buy. But in the future, you'll be able to, I'm not sure I want to have her following me around the entire time, but it's about having the voice in your ear that will guide you to the right place so you can take away the fear factor. And how do you hand that person seamlessly then off so that when you walk into your lounge, if you're a business traveler, it's not about going in and making a choice, it's about the choice having been made for you. You always have an espresso and a newspaper, then that's what will be waiting for you. How do we need to adapt? Back to the Heathrow example of the conveyor belts. If we're running a lounge, how do we need to change the lounge from a technology perspective? If this is the future we're seeing, well, it's not going to be that long stand of coffee and Cokes and the rest of it. It's going to be that personalization. And what does that mean in terms of infrastructure in the back end having to change? So I think where we will end up is a place of simplification, a paperless environment where it's not about choice, it's about relevant choice when we want to make choice. It's not about 2 billion hits on the internet. It's not about 2,000 hotels in New York. It's around those 5 to 7, or as I said, if you're a male, 3 to 5 choices that you're allowed to make, because that's what we can handle. Let me give you a little bit of a film as well of, from a travel perspective, what this can look like. So. Sorry, can we play the film? You got to say that as well. That looks pretty horrifying if you're thinking about being a travel company, because they can do everything in place. But if you look back to our generation's disruption, the video conferencing actually hasn't reduced travel. Video conferencing has actually increased travel. Because at the end of the day, the more people interact, the more people meet, the more people talk to each other, the more we're going to want to meet face to face. I guess if we're going to get to a future, that's all the stuff I've showed to date is a reality here and now in different places of the world. How will they evolve? They will probably be building blocks of new ideas that evolve the world. Is the future going to be Star Trek? We just get beamed up in one place and beamed down in the next place. It'll be a wonderful travel. It might not be as far away as you think. Let me give you a little bit of the future that's not here yet, but the future that's coming. Airbus is looking at building airplanes where you can spend your time on the airplane leaning back and watching the stars of the world around it, because we can now, with composite materials, literally build aircraft that are strong but see-through. Airbus is also looking at a new aircraft, what they call the Son of Concorde, which will allow us to fly from London to New York in an hour. I guess that means London to Mexico in an hour. Well, what does that mean? Well, we're the 7th biggest leisure travel destination in the world. It means that weekend trips from Europe becomes a reality for us as a travel business. It means that for me, it means I can probably, instead of traveling 200 days, can travel 50, but I can do 8 cities in a day. And I can actually spend some more time with my family and teach my son that this TV screen doesn't work with as the iPad. The patents are out there. It's being documented and it's being built now. It's not 20 years away. This is probably the future. What does that mean for your business if you've built your business on packaged holidays where people come for 2 weeks and stay? Are people going to have that attention span? If you look at the millennials and the kids today, I don't think they will. They are action junkies. They want new experiences. For them, 2 weeks in one place is probably going to be very close to hell. They want 3 or 4 days to experience something and then move on, because that's the reality they see on their mobile devices. So what does that mean in terms of how we package and sell our product? The environmental part I talked about, they now have solar-powered planes that fly across the Atlantic. It's a reality here and now. That means that we can really take our world to a different place. Because as I said, the millennials are not going to accept us polluting the world. Same thing, they're looking now at where the airplanes, to be able to add extra weight, etc., now get catapulted off and land on a monorail. Because some of the biggest fuel consumption issues when you fly an airplane is the start and landing part of it. Well, it might take them 50 years to build out the monorail landing, so we got a little bit of time. But it's all about driving down the cost to make it more available. We talk about the sharing community, Airbnb, etc. Most hotels today haven't really suffered by Airbnb because it's created a whole new niche of travel, just like the low-cost carriers did when they came from the start, because they allowed people that historically have not been able to travel to be able to afford to travel. So once again, not a threat, but an opportunity for all of us. Hotel rooms. I talked briefly about some of the things. It's cool that you can check in with your fingerprint, etc. But in reality, what is a hotel room? It's 4 walls where someone has defined what you have to live with when you're there, and it absolutely do not feel like home. So what some of the hotel chains are looking at, and I'll show you a bit of a video from Jumeirah in terms of how they're redefining it, is how can they take that experience and make it feel the way you want it to feel, by actually being able to interact and feel like you're home. So let me briefly show you Jumeirah's version of the next generation hotel room.
At Aurora, biometric scanning makes you the key to your own room. You have the potential to unlock a new dimension in in-room experience. Full-size e-ink walls enable the customization of visual surroundings and the synchronization of content from the cloud. Arten, our digital butler, predicts your needs and responds to an infinite possibility of requests. Turn on the news, Arten.
Sure thing, Chris.
News at 9 with Niklas Andréen.
In breaking news today, robots attack Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. More on this in just a moment.
Our directional speakers allow guests to enjoy the perfect acoustic sweet spot from anywhere in the room. A foldable bed and automatic chair create an uncluttered room environment as simplicity stimulates productivity and enjoyment. State-of-the-art bathroom features provide the ultimate bathing experience. Arten, could you please activate work mode?
Right away.
The room easily enters preset modes to accommodate for leisure, work, or bedtime, all lightning fast. Jumeirah looks forward to providing you with a stay of a lifetime at Aurora.
So they're literally, not tomorrow, but today, planning for how they can turn that hotel room into your hotel room, not the hotel room that they have defined. You want it to look like your living room at home and feel like you're at home when traveling. You want it to be something completely different and exotic. You'll have the choice. It won't be the same standard room in every 288-room hotel. Augmented reality, people go, oh my God, that's going to change the world. Mike Zucker just paid $2 billion for the most coolest augmented reality that's out there. Just like video conferencing, people want to meet people. It will change gaming, it will change entertainment, but it won't replace face-to-face. So I don't think we need to worry that much about it, but we need to figure out how we make it part of our offering. And I go back to my DHL experience, as I said at the start. Maybe this is where we want to end up. My personal view would be, it would be very nice if they came and picked me up, put me in a crate where I wouldn't be damaged on the way, made sure that I got there when I needed to be there. How many people have not spent hours with delayed weather and everything else out there to try to get to where you want to go? So we don't always need to look at technology from the future. What we need to look at is the technology in industries that are parallel to us. How can we take that technology and turn it into something that we use? So at Travelport, we're trying to do that in terms of, it's about information, making sure you have all the choices, where an airline ticket is not just a price, a hotel room is not just a name on a list and a price, but you can actually see what you get attached to it. That's the starting point. It is about moving our travel industry, because as much as technology has revolutionized travel, a lot of us still live in the old text-based world. But it's about putting this in APIs. And in the near future, if you look at the power of technology today, pretty much anything you want and need to service your customers is available, and you can build it off an API into an app that defines. It's about defining what you want your customer journey to be. So that's is rounding off and giving you a couple of minutes back on your time. So for us, the challenge as Travelport is, we're going through the same evolution as you are. We used to be a company who defined ourselves by the fact that we ran America's 4th largest data center. That's who we were. That's what was cool about us. You can walk into our data. We have a data room that never ends. It has its own diesel generators to make sure it can keep powered. Our challenge is, that's not enough in the future, because what we need to transform into is someone that helps people book tickets to actually a commerce platform that allows travel buyers to buy travel the way they want to buy it. Back to my example earlier, it's not about giving them lists and lists and lists of choices. It's about facilitating for those of you that want to build those applications where it's about, I booked your travel, don't worry about it, here's your itinerary when you book your business meeting. Do you want to change anything, to make sure you can have that capability? So that's the evolution that we are going to have to go through. I think that's the evolution that you guys are going to have to go through. And most importantly, one thing that most people think is that technology simplifies the world. It absolutely doesn't. For every single technology innovation we come up with, it allows people to do things that they couldn't do before. It just adds complexity to it. So we simplify the old, but it allows us to handle more complexity. So yes, it does but it's never going to get simple, because the more technology advances, the more it will give us options and choices we've never had. So the whole challenge for all of us is, how do we package that so we cater for the customers that are here and now and where it's important for us? And for us here, I'm sadly becoming part of the older generation now, which is always a struggle. But we got to figure out what the students that are here want, because that is what's going to define Mexico's future as a travel and a leisure nation. How well you can harness the power of taking the capabilities you have with 120 million to actually be the leader of the future of travel technology, because you have all the tools here, but it's figuring out the right answers to it. And with that said, I actually think my box is waiting outside, so I'm going to be heading back to Stockholm. Thank you very much, and hopefully you have gotten some insight and thoughts about the future that you can harness yourself. Thank you.